I want to thank the University of Arizona Bookstore for its very gracious hospitality and to Daniel Short for her kindness as host today. Also, my deepest thanks to Dr. Malcolm Campitello, the head of the Department of Spanish and Portuguese, that because of his kindness and generosity, that Dr. Campitello, also head of the Arizona Humanities Seminar Program, that has informed me that I will be a humanities program course giver that soon, okay, on the topic of Alfred Hitchcock. The films of Alfred Hitchcock, the seminar entitled Dark Knight. Remember that Hitchcock didn't get everything he wanted, but he was knighted finally by Queen Elizabeth. So he was Sir Alfred for about a year before he passed on in 1980. So that seminar will be given soon. My special thanks to the organizing committee, to Dr. Miriam Ursua Montoya, to Dr. Rosario Hall, to the graduate students, all excellent, Claudia Cruz, Nathan Merrick, then Guillermo Martinez, that I have to say that Nathan Merrick and Guillermo Martinez are direct descendants of Alfred Hitchcock. So if you want to know anything about film, how film is made, and how to direct film, which is not easy, that as Alfred Hitchcock, who directed 54 films, okay, in his brilliant career, but they are his noble descendants. My thanks also to Carlos Pacheco. In absentia, Carlos Pacheco, like all of you, has immense talent. He designed 4 of the covers of my books, and he designed this wonderful and very striking cover for Spellbound. I teach a course on Aztec mythology that according to the Aztecs, the musical instruments were robbed by human beings from the gods. That means that anything that is done in music goes straight to heaven. Okay, good. And kind of this reciprocity, good. And thank you very much to Mia Montoya, graced with a very beautiful soprano voice. To Kathy Zavala, the acoustic guitar is one of the most difficult instruments to play, particularly classical music on the acoustic guitar. This is a wonderful performance. And of course, to my dear friend, Arnulfo Velázquez, for that very moving rendition of my favorite song, La Paloma, that was also the favorite song of Carlota, Empress of Mexico, and one of the favorite characters of Carlos Fuentes. Okay, good. On this musical note, and as a pedagogical device, to understand both Hitchcock and Fuentes, who are parallel creators, magnificent parallel creators, 2 songs of one of my favorite rock and roll stars from Macon, Georgia, the Jerry Lee Lewis. Number 1, whole lot of shaking going on. Number 2, every day I have to cry some. This sums up both Fuentes and Hitchcock. A whole lot of shaking going on. Both, in my estimation, are, and paradoxically it may be said, conservative revolutionaries. Hitchcock wanted nothing to do with politics. Like my advisor, thesis advisor at Harvard University, Anderson Nimbert, because he had suffered indirectly from politics, because he was born in 1899, because Great Britain had gone through in his lifetime 2 disastrous wars. Because he was caught in this, he decided leave politics out Fuentes, as opposed to Cortázar, who made a mess of politics, that unfortunately, that knew how to play to the very end politics in one of the most difficult situations, Mexican politics. Okay? Why both revolutionaries? Why the shaking? And why conservative revolutionaries? Because Fuentes, influenced by experimental novelists, James Joyce, Aldous Huxley, D.H. Lawrence, brought the novel back to the status it held in the 19th century. The heroes, and we all have heroes, okay? The heroes of Carlos Fuentes, Zola, Flaubert, Balzac, the great French novelists, and Fuentes then brought this into the 20th century, brought this to Latin America in the novela tapizante, the all-encompassing novel. His originality lies in his fusion of traditional ingredients in the novel, characterization, plot, sequential development, that suspense, tension, all of these things are present in the 19th century novel. But they had disappeared with the highly touted nouveau roman of Nathalie Sarraute and others at the beginning of the 20th century, where expression became extraordinarily rarefied, when language counted for language's sake, where they were divorced from reality. A good example of that is Nathalie Sarraute, Tropisms. Tropisms is a beautiful work, but is a work that's contained within itself. Fuentes, in this all-encompassing vision, brought the Latin American novel to the stature that was enjoyed by the French and English and Russian novel in the 19th century. Why a book about Carlos Fuentes and Alfred Hitchcock? On first sight, they seem to be the polar opposites. Hitchcock was from solid middle-class Britain, the son of a greengrocer, okay, that suffered throughout his life from obesity, bariatric surgery was not prevalent during most of his life. I don't think he wanted it. His maximum weight was 349 pounds. He was obese and presumably also a glandular deficiency as a youth. He was a very shy person, very few friends, that isolated in the schoolyard, that isolated also in his home, that he himself has stated to one of his biographers, Patrick McGilligan, that his parents left the house at 6 o'clock to go to a restaurant, put him to bed. So they left him alone. Essentially, he woke up at 8 o'clock and he was alone. A very lonely person who that compensated through a life of the imagination. Fuentes, on the other hand, that was born into privilege. Okay, Ann Richardson said that George Bush Sr. was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Fuentes was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Okay, on his grandfather's side, the Mexican elite, they were immigrant from Germany, cafeteros in Veracruz. The family plantation was, of course, raided by revolutionaries, occupied by revolutionaries, and there went the family fortune. Fuentes lamented that throughout his life because he was a status driver. He went time after rich women. He said the rich women liked him, but then they consulted their fathers, and their father said, "What, a rider? Penniless? Where's the oil? Where's the gold?" And they dumped him until he found the woman behind the man, Rita Macedo. Beautiful, talented, one of the leading actresses in Mexico, who, because of the subsequent affairs, particularly the affair with Jean Seberg, which became public, divorced him. Fuentes had no problem whatsoever with girls. Hitchcock did, okay? You might ask Hippie Hedren, okay, about that. Hitchcock, very conscious of his weight. Anthony Hopkins, who starred in a film just released November 23rd. Hitchcock, okay, a magnificent British actor that plays Hitch in fat suit. Okay, that he was asked to put on weight. It would have been about 70 pounds. And Hopkins said at his age, he could not put on 70 pounds because he would never be able to take it off. Okay, remember, it's much easier to put on weight. I look at some food and I put on weight than to take it off. Okay, Fuentes always regally slim, always handsome, always impeccably coiffed, always in Giorgio Armani suits. Fuentes' problem was tension, probably hypertension. That in the 80s he suffered a quintuple bypass. I know one person who suffered a sextuple bypass. He suffered a quintuple bypass, and it caught up with him. Okay, that he died suddenly that last May of an extraordinary hemorrhage. Okay, death came very quickly. But he wrote on his nerves. Okay, the Greeks, I'm interested, both Hitchcock and Fuentes are mythomaniacs. Myth, classical Greek and Roman myth, that in the case of Alfred Hitchcock, classical Greek and Roman myth, Egyptian myth and Aztec myth in the case of Fuentes, that are important throughout their works. One of the things that unites Alfred Hitchcock and Carlos Fuentes, and there are many, that are devotion to their craft. Okay, that 54 films in Alfred Hitchcock. He was, when he was in his 80s, he was at work on his last film. But Carlos Fuentes, more than 20 novels, did 5 collections of short stories, an enormous number of essays, because he also worked as a journalist. That Fuentes himself, in one of his novels, his most autobiographical novel, if you're interested in his affair with Jean Seberg, Diana o la Cazadora Solitaria, that reference to the goddess of the hunt, Diana, okay, who is Jean Seberg, the blonde Hollywood goddess, okay, whom he met while she was filming Macho Callahan in Mexico. Fuentes has throughout his life been influenced by film. Okay, that he was brought by his father, Rafael Vertigo Fuentes, weekly to the movies. He emulates and he writes in his biography, En Esto Creo, on film stars. And some of the critics of Fuentes have stated he really wanted to be Maria Felix. The superstar. Maria Felix called Fuentes mujerujo. Now you translate that, mujerujo. How do you translate it? She said con alma de mujer, or hombre con alma de mujer. But this was Felix's mujerujo, that he was mujerujo. But in any case, they became enemies when he wrote Orquídeas a la luz de la luna, portraying Maria Felix, not Maria Felix, but Maria, as hypochondriac, drug addicted, suicidal, and megalomaniacal. She tried to get the president of Mexico to halt the production of Orquídeas a la luz de la luna, Orchids in the Moonlight, in Mexico. Another factor that unites both Fuentes and Hitchcock is that they are both from Catholic tradition. Very important. Okay, Hitchcock was schooled por bien o por mal by the Jesuits. Okay, at St. Ignatius. So he had an idea of what guilt is, what sin is, what redemption is, which is seen throughout his works. In addition, he did not have one of the greatest of fathers, in contrast with Fuentes, who identified with his father throughout his life, and it was adored by both his father and his mother. His father had the jailer lock up Hitchcock when he was 9 years old and put him in jail. And the jailer said to the young boy, Hitchcock, "This is what we do to naughty little boys." Hitchcock never forgot that. Okay, good. He even thought of having this put on his tomb. Okay, good. That he had an obsession with death, with murder, with lynching, with violence, and with guilt and redemption that we'll see here. That in the clips that I'll show you today. Every day I have to cry some. The second song of Jerry Lee Lewis. One of my favorite authors, Truman Capote, a major American author who needs more recognition than he's gotten. He's the author of this beautiful book on which Audrey Hepburn's best film was made, Breakfast at Tiffany's. Holly Golightly, I think, is her best role. And also In Cold Blood, a documentary. But he also has a book called Unanswered Prayers. And I think his book applies to both Hitchcock and Fuentes. That every minute God receives millions of prayers. God, please don't make it rain on my garden party. I have 100 guests, that it has to be warm and bright and sunny. That God, please have Billy Cadillac propose to me today, because he has 400,000 shares of Microsoft and 2 condominiums in Malibu. And what does God do? God does not answer most all of the prayers. Because answering these prayers are not in the best interest of the people who are praying for them. Hitchcock, I don't know if he had all sorts of neuroses that I'm not sure if he consulted a psychiatrist or whatever. But one critic mentioned that if he did consult a psychiatrist, it would not be because of his fetishes for blondes. Madeline Carroll in 39 Steps, that he made the acting career of Grace Kelly, in Dial M for Murder, in Rear Window, in To Catch a Thief, Kim Novak, who was named Miss Deep Freeze, as her stepping stone to fame, and one of her best pictures, of course, is we'll see some clips from it. Vertigo, Vera Miles, who starred in Psycho. Janet Leigh, who was Marion Crane the Bird. Birds are important not only in The Birds, and we'll see a clip from Les Oiseaux, The Birds, but birds are important. Remember that in Psycho, the killer stuffs birds as well as stuffing his mother. This shows you where the sardonic vision of Alfred Hitchcock leads. Fuentes has defined his own art as realismo simbólico, symbolic realism. Not photographic realism, but not reality as it is, not documentary realism, but that Hitchcock also is symbolic realism, but that in Vertigo, Hitchcock shows his love for one of the most beautiful cities on earth, San Francisco. And San Francisco is seen literally, but a literal reconstruction. We'll see a scene, I want to show you a scene from the beginning of Vertigo, which is highly symbolic, which takes place at Ernie's. Ernie's is a 5-star restaurant, like the Tack Room that used to exist. I'm not sure there's the 5-star restaurant left in Tucson. Ernie's is a 5-star restaurant. The restaurant we see was duplicated bit by bit in Hollywood. The wallpaper is blood red. The carpet is blood red. That it was all redone and exaggerated by Hitchcock in Hollywood. That he waited for the exact time of day to film an alley scene where the confluence of light and shadow was perfect. Okay, that he spent weeks on the classic scene in Psycho, which is repeated if you see that the Anthony Hopkins film that Hitchcock, the shower scene. Okay, that he spent weeks filming it. How long does it last on screen? 30 minutes. Hitchcock was very, in terms of ingredients, Fuentes uses the conservative ingredients of 19th century plot, characterization, that ambience, character development, all of these things that were that marginalized at the beginning of the 20th century. Hitchcock uses plot, characterization, mystery, suspense, twisting and endings, all very conservative elements. He's not an experimental filmmaker. Fuentes is not an experimental novelist. But they combine, okay, they synthesize. What Fuentes did for the novel, Fuentes did for film. Okay, that he, as I point out in my book, he elevated film to a high art. Okay, but he got caught. He was first criticized for being a popularizer. Okay, made a lot of money. His film that made the most money, ironically, was Psycho. Okay, black and white. He did not make Psycho in black and white for aesthetic purposes. Okay, color was all the rage. In a process, extraordinary process, which I don't think is used much anymore, VistaVision, okay, in which Vertigo was made. He used black and white, and he used black and white for economic purposes because the studios would not fund in the middle 50s, a highly conservative era, Dwight D. Eisenhower, President of the United States, the McCarthy hearings, the House Un-American Activities Committees, that extraordinarily conservative. Those of you who did not live through that decade, it's hard to imagine. Okay, but censorship was all important. He didn't violate censorship codes, but he pushed them. Okay, to the limits for what he could do at the time. And Psycho was based on a novel by Robert Bloch. Okay, ironically enough, 2012 is the year of Alfred Hitchcock. There are two films, okay, that on Hitchcock, The Girl, and the girl that is Tippi Hedren. Okay, Tippi Hedren, an extraordinarily gifted actress. Robin Wood, one of the first and one of the foremost critics of Hitchcock, has stated that Marnie is his best film. Ironically enough, the British Film Institute and the critics at Sight and Sound, a major cinematic journal, have named this year in 2012 Vertigo as the #1 film in filmic history, supplanting Citizen Kane. I would also put Marnie up there as well. What did the critics, particularly the British critics, say about Vertigo when it was released in the late 50s? They liked the automobile scenes. They liked Madeline in the green Porsche. They didn't like the rest of it. So you can see in terms of how things develop. Fuentes was very much criticized for his novel, which is one of the leading novels, along with Garcia Marquez, Cien Años de Soledad, 100 Years of Solitude, La Muerte de Artemio Cruz. And here we find another encrucijada. Here we find another joining of Hitchcock and Fuentes. The theme which arises from Catholicism, sin, confession that guilt. Okay, that many of Hitchcock's characters are guilt-ridden, as is Scotty in Vertigo. The irony is in Vertigo that the guilty are not punished. The only person in the film who is not punished is the killer of his wife. He snaps her neck. Okay, Gavin Elster. Okay, that he wants to get rid of his wife. I'm an economic determinist. Everything depends on money, one way or another, to get the other half of his wife's fortune that he didn't have to start with. The guilt is felt by James Stewart, who plays Scotty Ferguson, because he feels responsible for the death of his beloved Madeline, although he's not. He's tricked into it. This is very similar to the tricking of Felipe in the book by Fuentes, Auda, one of his greatest works, a work that Julio Cortázar said he wished he had written. 90 pages, but beautiful, consummate art. There's an Italian film that was made in the 70s on Auda. Auda links Vertigo. It's been influenced by Vertigo, as I point out in 2 of the chapters of my book, both thematically and cinematically. That in Fuentes' expert use of cinematic techniques like close-up, like extreme close-up, like high-angle shots, like low-angle shots, like pan shots. There is, at the very beginning of Vertigo, we don't have time to see it, but a close-up just on the eyes of Kim Novak to indicate that she is the center of a hypnotic spell that she will exert on Jimmy Stewart, which symbolizes the spell that films exert on the spectator. One of the books which is very important to read, Spellbound in Darkness. Okay, and that's one of the reasons for my title. Fuentes held spellbound by the cinematic image. I interviewed Fuentes one time, and he mentioned that the cinematic image is extraordinarily powerful. And he said to me, perhaps it is too powerful. Remember in your own cinematic viewings that images that are indelible, okay, in film, that the power of the visual. That Fuentes decided he wasn't going to compete with that, he was going to harness it. So he's harnessed in his work, okay, the visual image. Okay, let me show you first a clip from a film that initially had the kind of same reception as did Vertigo. It was panned, okay, at the box office. And although Hitchcock was originally criticized for being an over-popularizer, for appealing to sensationalism, for taking lurid themes and exploiting them for box office appeal, as he superbly did in Psycho, that when Hitchcock decided, because he wanted the Academy Award for Best Director, to make a film with sociological import, that with metaphysical considerations, that with an extraordinarily ambiguous ending, he was criticized for being highfalutin. He was criticized for being not popular enough, for not rendering a traditional Hollywood happily ever after ending, what is called in Spanish la novela rosa, that fires, bombs, heart attacks, disasters, floods, but at the end, todos se fueron a la playa. And that's what Evan Hunter, the author of Blackboard Jungle, who was hired by Hitchcock to write the script, one of the versions of the script for The Birds, wanted, okay, that a happily ever after ending when the family escapes the massing of the birds. That critics have been baffled by The Birds. Hitchcock himself was traditionally non-committal when he was asked what do the birds symbolize. One sociological is the idea of the birds who have been over and over attacked, devoured by human beings, helpless birds as opposed to the panthers, the rattlesnakes, even elephants. There's one scene in a diner where someone says hey Joe, 2 fried chickens with dumplings on top. Okay, some interpretation is that Hitchcock defends the birds, and the birds that he chose were not aves rapiñas. They were not birds that tear each other or their prey apart, like eagles, for example, or owls. They were common birds, finches, crows, sparrows, that suddenly and anti-biologically flock together, attack the human beings, and are invincible throughout the whole film. Here's a marvelous sequence with Tippi Hedren. Let's see if we can see. Tippi Hedren, the outsider at the Bodega Bay. Note the framing. Green and red are Hitchcock's favorite colors, as they are Fuentes' favorite colors in Aura. 2 women after the same man, a San Francisco criminal lawyer. Okay, good. Tippi Hedren at age 31 was a model that earned a fantastic salary, knew that her model career was limited, and decided to work for Fuentes for Hitchcock for $300 a week to support her daughter, that she was divorced, to support her young daughter, Melanie Griffith. Know that she does the whole scene in pantomime. No words. Jungle Gym, common seen throughout schools in America. She had to learn how to smoke. Okay, remember in the 50s, smoking was all the rage. Not as much as the 40s, but the rage. Note the green suit, it'll be torn to shreds by the birds at the end. She's waiting for a rival to release the kids. The rival, knowing that Melanie that is the one who claims her lover, that keeps the kids in session as long as possible with this inane mercy rhyme. But it's control, okay? They're the attacking birds and the attacking women in the film. That actually rises up in the camera, and the technique.
All right, children, now please put your songbooks away, then stand up alongside your desks. We'll go out to recess as soon as everybody gets ready.
Suzanne Plachette, very talented Hollywood actress who basically made her career in TV.
Until everybody has quieted down.
Close that door quickly.
What?
Please.
Note the lilting voice.
What is it?
Look. We've got to get the children out of here.
All right, children, now quiet. Quiet. Miss Daniels would like to see how we conduct ourselves during the fire drill. And we'd like you to show her how quiet and obedient you can be. We're going out of school now. I want those of you who live nearby to go directly home. I want the rest of you to go down the hill all the way to the hotel. Now, is that clear?
She does the exact worst thing possible, sends the kids out. And out they're extraordinarily vulnerable to attack.
Do not make a sound until I tell you to run. Then run as quickly as you can. Now, does everybody understand? Yes. All right, John, you lead the way.
Getting the ordinary crows infused with the demonic. And unbeatable. All the efforts of human beings that against them fail. Today, this film would be made with computer art. Okay, I hear it's done with back projection. Okay, that no children could be injured, and no were injured in the filming. Again, the reason for the massing, the reason for the attack is never explained by Hitchcock. And the ending of the film, like the ending of Fuentes' work on which it's based, a short story called Vlad, is open-ended. Okay, you have to interpret the final ending. If the birds are going to have a massive attack, at not only Bodega Bay, but San Francisco, if it's going to be dissipated, it's left in abeyance. Even though Bernard Herrmann wanted to use sound, Hitchcock said no sound. He used an instrument that created bird shrieks, but did not use what Bernard Herrmann is famous for in that famous shower scene with Janet Leigh, the violins. Okay, good. Fuentes has a short story which also been turned into a novel called Vlad about Dracula in Mexico. The ending is one that's influenced by the birds. In this case, the birds are bats. Okay, my interpretation of the birds is a supernatural one. Many critics see in it, and you can see in it what you want to. It's open, and Hitchcock left it open. Fuentes, the same familial disintegration. Novato is the only human one left. His wife becomes a vampire bat. His daughter becomes a vampire bat. You see them both ascending. Okay, at the very end, his wife is ironically named, again, the religious impact in Fuentes. There should be a thesis done on religion in Fuentes. It's called, his wife is named Asuncion, Assumption. And the whole irony, the Assumption, of course, celebrated in Mexico, is the Assumption of the Virgin to heaven. Okay, here Asuncion ascends to heaven as a vampire bat. Under the control of Vlad, because she wants immortality. Having lost one son, she wants to guarantee immortality for her other child. Okay, there's one more clip that I want to show you, and that's from Vertigo. As I say, a realism in both Hitchcock and Fuentes is a cover. Okay, that houses, old haunted houses, both Hitchcock and Fuentes are influenced by the neo-Gothic. is a cover for for psychological and metaphysical states. Okay. Here is a key scene at the very beginning of Vertigo. Establishing shots, a restaurant that no longer exists, Ernie's in San Francisco. James Stewart as Scotty Ferguson. He's supposed to track Madeline, who supposedly is demented and possessed by the supernatural force, her great-grandmother. Instead, he falls in love with her. Hitchcock was never afraid to let the camera linger, as opposed to many artists today in the cinema who 30 different shots per minute. Okay, the shot lasting only 2 seconds. Kim Novak, barebacked, okay, in a green stole as Madeline. His first girlfriend is introduced in a realistic way, in a mid-shot, face on. Kim Novak is introduced in a distant shot, remote, inaccessible, and ghost-like, like Aura. Madeline has a special music, very romantic. Herman was a genius. Note the lighting, she's Venus. Okay, she's Aphrodite, the Greek cameo. Midge, his girlfriend, whom he rejects, is lit in a very traditional way. She's lit from behind. Note the fact that she's a double. Actually, she's 6 people seen in a mirror. Her husband says she's transfixed and stays by the portals of the past. Portals are important. Here are the portals of an exclusive hotel where Madeline supposedly resides, the Brocklebank in San Francisco. Okay, as I say, the influence of Hitchcock is tremendous. Directors like Brian De Palma, directors like Iñárritu in Mexico have been influenced, okay, by his techniques. Fuentes, object of tremendous criticism. There was an article in Siempre one time that Fuentes assassinated 3 generations of Mexican authors. Jealousy, the same phenomena that basically can be seen in the fact that neither Hitchcock nor Fuentes got what they most desired. Hitchcock wanted, above all, to get an Academy Award as Best Director, and deserves one. Okay. Fuentes wanted and almost achieved it. I was there when the Nobel Prize Committee was shadowing him at University of Colorado. The semifinal step for the Nobel Prize that both created throughout their life. That Fuentes, who was the son of diplomats, the father is a career diplomat. He was an ambassador to France. When he was in his 80s, lecturing at Cambridge, the normally unflappable Fuentes responded crisply, angrily to one of his questioners, a Mexican student abroad in Cambridge, who said, Mr. Fuentes, you're 80 years old. Don't you think, when are you going to quit writing? Fuentes was irascible. Okay, it touched his very soul. He said, and you, sir, when are you going to stop breathing? Very uncharacteristic of the gentle and gentlemanly-like diplomatic Carlos Fuentes, whose last work, a piece on the new president of France, was written a day before that he passed away in Mexico. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you.